FRRR seemed to have come from an alignment of the stars. It began back in 1997 when trustees of the Sydney Myer Fund invited members of the Myer family and staff to put up some ideas for landmark projects that would celebrate the arrival of Sydney Myer in Australia back in 1899. The first star, the shining star, was Bailey Myer, Sydney Myer's son, who, as a primary producer himself and well known in rural areas, wanted to do something for the bush. 1990s had been a decade of huge economic and social change. Rural communities seemed to be in decline in many areas. The banks of the schools, the infrastructure was collapsing, and there was a feeling of despair and helplessness in the face of global change. Bales and I had worked on a number of rural projects, and he'd encouraged me to support particularly rural women, who he called the backbone of rural communities. So we put our heads together and came and worked for probably 6 months on a proposal that we put to the Sydney Myer Fund. And this was basically to use the resources of philanthropy to work in partnership with government and business to bring those to rural people so that they could revitalise and strengthen their communities and adjust to change. We took the proposal to the Sydney Myer Fund trustees, and they endorsed the project and set us up with $1 million working fund to take it to the next level. The next star was John Anderson, then the Minister for Transport and Regional Services. We contacted him within minutes. He was on board. He'd just been to Nebraska on a study tour and had been impressed by the way Nebraska had turned around its rural decline through a national or a statewide foundation that combined what we had in mind too, the efforts of government, business and philanthropy. John made the resources of Parliament and importantly his department to help us find a way to set up this foundation. It was complex at that time. Philanthropy was not known very well in rural areas. Rural development wasn't considered a charitable activity. Very few rural organisations had DGR status, so there was a lot of work to be done, and John and his department saw us through to the end. The next star was Catherine Brown, who we engaged then to work with the department and us to find that legal pathway, and there needed to be legislative changes and new rules, and through her work with the department and another star, John Emerson from Freehills, who gave his time pro bono, they managed to set up this strange structure called FRRR, which was a partnership between Goliath, the federal government, and David, the Sydney Myer Fund. But towards the end of 1999, the ducks all appeared to be in line, and we were ready to launch, again with John's help. He invited the Prime Minister to announce FRRR at the Regional Australia Summit in October 1999. The Right Honourable Ian Sinclair was a leader in the Regional Australia Summit, and we were inspired by his passion for rural Australia and invited him to become the first chairman of FRRR. He was our next shining star. For 20 years he served faithfully and passionately as chairman, seeing FRRR through the establishment phase and leaving it in very good hands when he retired in 2019. While all this was happening, my job was to pull it all together, keep the communication open, but most importantly to consult widely with stakeholders, potential stakeholders, and that included organising a national day of consultation. People came from all over Australia, National Farmers Federation, community organisations, government departments, Country Women's Association, communications, media, etc. And it was a very stimulating and excited forum, which concluded that the proposal for a national foundation to support rural communities was 100% endorsed. A number of stars followed the setup of the foundation. Sylvia Edmonds was a standout. She had worked in Philanthropy Australia and also in the federal government, so she understood how these different organisations worked and was able to bravely and boldly engage them and insist that they work together. She was followed by another inspiring person in Alex, who brought her own experience in industry and rural affairs, followed by the wonderful Natalie, who now has brought her own experience and skills to the foundation. But I just wanted to say that Baillieu Meyer has never been a man to put himself forward and brag about what he's done and what he can do. He's just a man who understands the way things are through a great love of knowledge and figures and facts, and he seems to have a way of inspiring people to be brave and take up good ideas. And to me, this was the highlight of my working career, working with a man who was so quietly inspiring and who knew what was good for the bush. And he deserves a medal. That's FRRR in the early days.